The rejection came swift and brutal, right there on the neon-lit streets of downtown LA. Nia Brooks stood frozen as her date walked away without a backward glance, his dismissive words still echoing. "You're just not my type." The terracotta dress that had made her feel beautiful moments before now felt like a costume for a role she'd never land. But as tears threatened to spill, footsteps approached, slow, measured, dangerous. A man in a perfectly tailored navy suit emerged from the shadows, his presence commanding the very air around him. Rain droplets clung to his sharp jawline, and his dark eyes burned with an anger that wasn't directed at her, but at how she'd been treated. "Did he hurt you?" Han Ji-sung's voice carried the weight of authority and something else, protection. She tried to brush it off, but he stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "You won't cry over him again." The conviction in his voice made her believe him, though she had no idea who he was or why the entire street seemed to hold its breath when he spoke. She only knew that for the first time in years, someone saw her pain and refused to let it continue. Welcome back to Korean Mafia Lovers. Hey there. Please drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support is essential for us to continue bringing you these incredible emotional stories. The Korean-Mexican fusion restaurant had been his choice, and Nia Brooks had agreed because she was trying to be the kind of woman who said yes to new experiences, the kind who didn't overthink every detail or second-guess her worth before walking through the door. She'd spent an hour getting ready in her small apartment in mid-city, carefully applying makeup that enhanced her deep brown skin's natural glow. Her natural curls were styled in a twist-out that framed her face perfectly, and she'd chosen her favorite terracotta dress, the one that made her feel confident and beautiful. At 28, Nia had learned to celebrate the small victories, and feeling good in her own skin was definitely one of them. The date itself had been fine. David was a marketing executive she'd met through a mutual friend, and their conversation flowed easily enough. He laughed at her jokes about the challenges of freelance graphic design, and she smiled politely when he talked about his CrossFit routine and his new Tesla. There were no major red flags, no awkward silences that stretched too long, but there was also no spark. Still, Nia found herself hoping as they walked out into the cool Los Angeles evening. The streets of downtown LA buzzed with energy, neon signs reflecting off wet pavement from an earlier drizzle, the distant sound of traffic mixing with laughter from nearby bars and restaurants. Maybe he'd suggest coffee somewhere else. Maybe he'd ask for her number again, this time with genuine interest. Instead, David stopped abruptly near the valet stand and exhaled sharply, avoiding her eyes. "Look, Nia." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture already telling her everything she needed to know. "You're great, really, but I don't think you're my type." The words hit her like a physical blow, not because she was desperately attracted to him, but because of how casually he delivered them. As if discarding her took zero emotional effort, as if the past 3 hours meant nothing. "Oh," she managed, her voice smaller than she intended. He gave her shoulder a stiff pat, the kind you'd give a coworker after a failed presentation. "Thanks for tonight, though, you're really cool." And then he was gone, walking toward his car without a backward glance, already pulling out his phone to text someone else, probably making plans that didn't include her. Nia stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. The rejection itself wasn't devastating. She barely knew David. But it felt like confirmation of a fear she'd carried for years, that she was always almost enough, but never chosen. Never the woman men fought for or couldn't forget. She found a bench nearby and sank onto it, blinking rapidly as the night seemed to swallow her confidence whole. She wasn't the type to cry in public. Her mother had raised her to be stronger than that, but the tears came anyway, hot and humiliating, sliding down her cheeks despite her best efforts to stop them. That was when she heard the footsteps, slow, measured, purposeful. She lifted her head and froze. A man stood a few feet away watching her with an expression that wasn't pity. No, it was anger. Not directed at her, but at the way she'd been treated. He wore a navy suit that fit him like tailored armor, rain droplets sliding down his sharp jawline. His black hair was styled with precise intention, and his posture was tall, dangerous, and elegant. His presence didn't shout for attention. It commanded it. 2 men walking past lowered their heads respectfully as they noticed him. A driver waiting by a luxury sedan subtly straightened his spine. Even the valet attendants seemed to move with more purpose when he was near. But Nia was too heartbroken to register any of that. "Did he hurt you?" the man asked, his voice deep and controlled, tinged with a soul accent that made each word sound deliberate. Nia quickly wiped her cheeks, embarrassed to be caught crying by a stranger. "No, I mean, not physically, just stupid date stuff." His eyes softened slightly, but the anger remained. "Stupid for him," he corrected gently. "Not for you." She tried to laugh it off, the sound hollow in the night air. "It's whatever. I'll get over it, I always do." He stepped closer, and she caught the subtle scent of expensive cologne mixed with something else. Danger, maybe. Authority. "No," he said, his gaze unwavering. "You won't cry over him again." Her breath caught. There was something about the conviction in his voice, firm, protective, almost solemn, that made her believe him without understanding why. "I'm Ji-sung," he said after a moment, his voice softer now. "Han Ji-sung." The name meant nothing to her, but she noticed how the street seemed to take a collective breath when he introduced himself. The subtle shift in the atmosphere, the way people gave them a wider berth without seeming to do so deliberately. "Ji-sung," she whispered, testing the name on her tongue. "I'm Nia." He nodded once, as if filing the information away somewhere important. "Come, Nia. You should not be alone tonight." She opened her mouth to protest. After all, he was a stranger, and her mother had raised her to be smarter than this. But something in his expression stopped her. There was no lust in his eyes, no impatience or ulterior motive she could detect, just a surprising gentleness beneath a layer of controlled intensity that made her feel safer than she had all evening. He offered his hand, not grabbing, not pulling, not demanding, just offering. And Nia, exhausted from trying to be strong on her own, from always being the one who picked herself up and dusted herself off, took it. His hand was warm, calloused in places that suggested he wasn't just another businessman in an expensive suit. His grip was firm but careful, as if he understood exactly how fragile she felt in that moment. As they walked away from the restaurant, Nia caught a glimpse of David through the window of his Tesla, already on another call, already moving on to whatever came next. But for the first time since he'd walked away, she didn't feel the sharp sting of rejection. Instead, she felt something she couldn't quite name, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Ji-sung didn't take her somewhere flashy or dangerous. Instead, he led her to a quiet cafe tucked between two larger buildings, its entrance marked only by a simple wooden sign with Korean characters etched in elegant script. The place looked unassuming from the outside, but the moment they stepped through the door, Nia realized this wasn't just any cafe. The interior was sleek and dimly lit, with warm amber lighting that made everything feel intimate and safe. Soft jazz hummed from hidden speakers, and the rich smell of roasted coffee beans filled the air. The furniture was minimalist but expensive, dark wood tables, leather chairs that looked like they'd been crafted by hand, and artwork on the walls that Nia's trained eye recognized as original pieces. But what struck her most was how the staff reacted to Ji-sung's arrival. They bowed. Not the casual nod of recognition you'd give a regular customer, but deep, respectful bows that spoke of hierarchy and reverence. A young woman behind the counter immediately began preparing something without being asked, her movements quick and precise. "Who exactly are you?" Nia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ji-sung studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face as if deciding how much truth she could handle. "Someone who makes sure the people I care about are treated well," he said finally. "You care about me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, vulnerability bleeding through despite her best efforts to maintain some dignity. "Tonight, yes," he said simply, and the honesty in his voice was more comforting than any elaborate declaration could have been. "Tonight you needed someone." He guided her to a corner table, away from the few other patrons scattered throughout the cafe. The chair he pulled out for her was positioned so she could see the entire room, though she didn't understand why that mattered until much later. The young woman from the counter approached with a tray, setting down a warm honey latte and a plate of teok drizzled with sweet syrup. Nia hadn't ordered anything, but somehow Ji-sung had known exactly what she needed. "Eat slowly," he instructed gently, settling into the chair across from her. "Breathe deeply. Talk only if you want to." She wanted to. For the first time in months, Maybe years, Nia found herself talking to someone who truly listened. Not someone waiting for their turn to speak, not someone mentally composing their response while she was still forming her thoughts. Ji-sung listened with his entire being, his attention focused on her so completely that the rest of the world seemed to fade away. She told him about her work as a freelance graphic designer, how she'd built her business from nothing, but was constantly struggling to be taken seriously by clients who saw her as young, black, and female. 3 strikes against her in their minds. She talked about the loneliness of working from home, of building something meaningful but having no one to share the victories with. "I keep thinking I'm doing something wrong," she admitted, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Like there's some secret to being chosen that everyone else knows but me." Ji-sung's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The problem is not with you, Nia. The problem is with people who cannot recognize what is rare." The way he said her name, careful, deliberate, as if it meant something, made her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite identify. "You don't even know me," she pointed out, though she found herself leaning forward slightly, drawn in by the intensity of his gaze. "I know enough," he replied. "I know you dress carefully because you understand the power of presentation. I know you chose that restaurant tonight, even though Korean-Mexican fusion probably isn't your favorite cuisine, because you're willing to try new things for someone else's sake. I know you cry quietly when you're hurt, because you've learned that your pain makes other people uncomfortable." Nia's breath caught. Each observation was accurate and devastating in its precision. "I know," he continued, his voice dropping lower, "that you have been settling for people who see you as an option, instead of demanding to be someone's priority." The words hit her like a revelation. She had been settling. For David, for the clients who paid her less than she was worth, for friends who only called when they needed something. She'd been so afraid of being alone that she'd accepted being undervalued. "How do you see all that?" she asked. "Because I recognize the signs," he said quietly. "I have spent my life learning to read people, to understand what they need and what they fear. It is necessary in my line of work." There was something in the way he said it that made her curious, but before she could ask, he was speaking again. "Tell me about your dreams, Nia. Not your goals or your plans, your dreams." So she did. She told him about wanting to design book covers for major publishing houses, about the children's book series she'd been sketching in her spare time, about her secret hope of one day having her artwork displayed in galleries. Dreams she'd never spoken aloud because they felt too big, too impossible for someone like her. Ji-sung listened to every word, occasionally asking questions that showed he was not just hearing her, but understanding the deeper meaning behind what she shared. When she mentioned the children's book series, his eyes lit up with genuine interest. "What are the stories about?" he asked. "A little girl who can talk to colors," Nia said, feeling self-conscious. "Each color has a different personality and teaches her different lessons about life. It sounds silly when I say it out loud." "It sounds brilliant," he corrected firmly. "Children need stories that help them understand the world is full of beauty and possibility. You should pursue this." The conviction in his voice made her believe for a moment that maybe her dreams weren't so impossible after all. They talked until the cafe was nearly empty, until the staff began quietly cleaning around them. Nia realized she hadn't thought about David or his rejection in hours. Instead, she felt energized, inspired, seen in a way that was entirely new to her. "I should go," she said reluctantly, glancing at her phone. It was nearly midnight. "I'll take you home," Ji-sung said, already signaling to someone near the door. "You don't have to—" "I want to," he interrupted gently. "And, Nia, tomorrow you should apply for that design grant you mentioned, the one you think you're not qualified for." She stared at him. She'd mentioned the grant in passing, buried in a longer story about her career struggles, but he'd remembered, and more than that, he believed she deserved it. As they stepped outside, a black sedan pulled up to the curb with perfect timing. The driver got out and opened the door for them, another small gesture that spoke of a level of organization and resources that made Nia wonder exactly who Han Ji-sung was. But as she settled into the leather seat beside him, breathing in his subtle cologne and feeling safer than she had in years, she decided that some questions could wait. For tonight, it was enough to be chosen. 3 days later, Nia was still thinking about Ji-sung. She'd applied for the design grant, something she'd been putting off for months, and had already received a response requesting her portfolio. The coincidence felt too perfect to be random, but she pushed the thought aside as she focused on preparing her submission. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "How is the grant application progressing?" Jay. Her heart skipped. She'd given him her number when he'd dropped her off, but she hadn't expected him to use it so soon. Or at all, really. Men like Jisung, successful, sophisticated, clearly wealthy, didn't usually follow up with women like her. "Almost finished with my portfolio. Thank you for encouraging me to apply," she typed back. "I would like to see your work sometime, if you're comfortable sharing." The request was simple, but something about it made her pulse quicken. She'd shared her dreams with him, but showing someone her actual work felt more intimate somehow, more vulnerable. "I'm working at Café Luna today if you want to stop by." No pressure, though. His response came immediately. "Send me the address." 2 hours later, Nia looked up from her laptop to see Jisung walking through the door of the small coffee shop in mid-city. He was dressed more casually today, dark jeans and a black button-down shirt that somehow looked just as expensive as his suit had. Several women in the cafe turned to stare as he passed, but his attention was focused entirely on her. "You came," she said, closing her laptop as he approached her table. "I said I would," he replied, settling into the chair across from her. "I don't make promises I can't keep." There was something about the way he said it that made her believe this was a fundamental truth about him. Jisung was a man of his word. "Can I see?" he asked, nodding toward her laptop. Nia reopened it, angling the screen so he could see her portfolio. She watched his face as he scrolled through her work, logo designs for local businesses, website graphics, the book cover mock-ups she'd created for practice. His expression was focused, professional, and she found herself holding her breath waiting for his reaction. "This is exceptional work," he said finally, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest warm. "You have a gift for understanding what a brand needs to communicate." "Thank you," she said softly. "I just wish more people saw it that way." "They will." He turned the laptop back toward her. "Success often comes down to being in the right place at the right time with the right connections. You have the talent. Now you need the opportunities." Before she could respond, her phone rang. The caller ID made her stomach drop. David, her date from 3 nights ago. She declined the call, but it rang again immediately. "Excuse me," she said apologetically, stepping outside to answer. "Nia." "Hey, I've been thinking about our date." David's voice was different now, warmer, more interested. "I think I was too hasty. Maybe we should give it another shot." "I'm sorry, what?" Nia couldn't hide her confusion. "I know I said you weren't my type, but I've been thinking. Maybe I was wrong. You want to grab dinner tonight?" The audacity of it left her speechless. 3 days ago, he'd dismissed her without a second thought. Now he wanted another chance. What had changed? "David, Come on, Nia. Everyone deserves a second chance, right?" Through the cafe window, she could see Jisung watching her with a concerned expression. The contrast was stark. David's casual assumption that she'd be available whenever he decided she was worth his time, versus Jisung's consistent respect and attention. "No," she said firmly. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Are you serious? I'm offering you another shot here." The entitlement in his voice crystallized something for her. "I'm not the one who needs another shot, David. You had your chance and you made your choice. I'm not interested anymore." She hung up before he could respond and walked back into the cafe, her hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of standing up for herself. "Everything all right?" Jisung asked as she sat down. "My date from the other night," she explained. "Apparently he's changed his mind about me not being his type." Something dangerous flashed in Jisung's eyes. "What did you tell him?" "That I wasn't interested." She met his gaze. "I meant what I said the other night about not crying over him again. I'm done settling for people who see me as an option." The approval in his expression made her feel stronger, more confident in her decision. "Good," he said quietly. "You deserve better than someone who needs 3 days to realize your worth." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about her work, her goals, her plans for the grant application. Jisung asked thoughtful questions and offered insights that showed he understood both business and creativity. When she mentioned struggling to price her services appropriately, he pulled out his phone. "I'm sending you the contact information for a friend of mine," he said. She runs a boutique marketing firm and is always looking for talented designers. Tell her I recommended you. Ji-sung, you don't have to— I want to, he interrupted. You have talent that should be recognized and compensated accordingly. As the sun began to set, Nia realized they'd been talking for hours. She also realized that she felt different around Ji-sung, more confident, more valued, more like the woman she wanted to be. I should let you get back to your day, she said reluctantly. Actually, he said, his voice taking on a slightly different tone, there's something I should tell you about who I am, what I do. Something in his expression made her stomach tighten with anticipation. I'm not just a businessman, Nia. My work. It's complicated. There are aspects of my life that might concern you. She studied his face, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his hands had stilled on the table. What kind of work? He was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him weighing his words carefully. I run an organization that operates outside traditional business structures. We handle problems that conventional methods cannot solve. We protect people and interests that others might overlook or exploit. The careful phrasing told her everything, and nothing at once. But the way he watched her reaction, the tension in his posture, suggested this revelation was significant. Are you telling me you're involved in something illegal? She asked quietly. I'm telling you that my world can be dangerous, he replied, and that anyone close to me needs to understand that reality. The weight of his words settled between them. Nia thought about the way people reacted to him, the deference she'd witnessed, the resources he seemed to have at his disposal. The pieces were starting to form a picture she wasn't sure she was ready to see clearly. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I don't want there to be secrets between us, he said simply, and because I hope you'll choose to stay anyway. The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This powerful, controlled man was asking her to accept him, dangerous world and all. Her phone buzzed with another call from David. This time Ji-sung reached across the table and declined it for her. His movement swift and decisive. You won't cry over him again, he said, echoing his words from 3 nights ago. And he won't bother you again either. The quiet certainty in his voice sent a shiver down her spine, part fear, part something else entirely. Promise me something, she said, anything. Promise me you'll never lie to me. I can handle dangerous. I can't handle deception. I promise, he said without hesitation. No lies, ever. As they left the cafe together, Nia realized that her life had just taken a turn she'd never expected. She was falling for a man whose world she didn't fully understand, whose protection came with a price she couldn't yet calculate. But for the first time in her life she felt truly chosen, and that was worth almost any risk. The grant committee wanted to meet with her. Nia stared at the email on her laptop screen, reading it for the 3rd time to make sure she wasn't imagining things. Not only had her application been accepted for review, but they wanted to schedule an in-person interview for the following week. She immediately texted Ji-sung, I got the interview. His response came within minutes. I knew you would. When is it? Next Tuesday at 2 p.m. I'm terrified and excited and I think I might throw up. You're going to be brilliant. Would you like to celebrate tonight? Before she could respond, her phone rang. David again. This was the 5th call since yesterday, and her patience was wearing thin. She declined it, but immediately received a text. We need to talk. I'm not giving up on us. There was no us, and his persistence was starting to feel less like romantic pursuit and more like harassment. She blocked his number and tried to focus on preparing for her interview. That evening, Ji-sung took her to a rooftop restaurant in Beverly Hills. The view was spectacular, the city sprawling out below them in a glittering tapestry of lights. But Nia found herself more captivated by the way Ji-sung moved through the space, how the staff treated him with the same respectful deference she'd noticed at his cafe. You own this place too, don't you? She asked, as they were seated at a private table overlooking the city. I have investments in several establishments, he replied carefully. It helps to have places where privacy is guaranteed. The phrasing was diplomatic, but Nia was beginning to understand that everything about Ji-sung was carefully considered. He didn't speak carelessly or make casual statements. Every word was chosen with purpose. They talked about her upcoming interview, and Ji-sung offered insights about presenting herself with confidence while staying true to her artistic vision. His advice was practical and thoughtful, showing a deep understanding of both business dynamics and creative processes. "You know a lot about this for someone who handles problems," she said, using his own euphemism. "Successful organizations require diverse skills," he replied. "Understanding people, reading situations, knowing how to present information effectively. These are valuable in any context." As the evening progressed, Nia noticed subtle things that reinforced her growing understanding of who Ji-sung really was. The way their server spoke to him in Korean, the deference in his tone, the man at a nearby table who nodded respectfully when their eyes met. The fact that their table offered a clear view of all entrances and exits. "Ji-sung," she said during a lull in conversation, "what exactly is your organization?" He set down his wineglass and studied her face. "Are you certain you want to know?" The question sent a chill through her, but she nodded. "I told you I can handle dangerous. I meant it. My family has been involved in traditional business practices. For 3 generations," he began carefully. "We maintain order in situations where conventional law enforcement is ineffective or unwelcome. We protect communities and businesses that others might exploit. We ensure that agreements are honored and debts are paid." The careful language couldn't disguise what he was telling her. Nia felt her heart rate increase as the full reality settled in. "You're Korean Mafia," she said quietly. "That's a crude term, but not entirely inaccurate," he acknowledged. "We prefer to think of ourselves as a family business with traditional values." She was quiet for a long moment, processing this confirmation of what she'd begun to suspect. "Is that why David suddenly wants to see me again? Did you talk to him?" Ji-sung's expression darkened slightly. "I may have made it clear that his continued pursuit of you was unwelcome." "What does that mean, exactly?" "It means he received a visit from some associates of mine who explained that you were under my protection," he said calmly. "Nothing violent, simply educational." Nia's mind raced. The timeline made sense. David's sudden change of heart had come right after her afternoon with Ji-sung. "You had him threatened." "I had him informed," Ji-sung corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" She leaned back in her chair, trying to process the implications. "Ji-sung, I can fight my own battles. I don't need you to intimidate people on my behalf." "You're right," he said, and the immediate acknowledgement surprised her. "I overstepped, but Nia, you have to understand, in my world, protection is how we show care. It's how we demonstrate that someone matters to us." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. "I matter to you?" "More than I expected," he admitted. "More than is probably wise." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She glanced at it, frowning. "Answer it," Ji-sung said, his voice suddenly sharp with concern. "Hello?" she said cautiously. "Nia Brooks?" The voice was unfamiliar, male, with an edge that made her skin crawl. "Who is this?" "Someone who thinks your boyfriend needs to learn some manners. Maybe if something happened to his pretty little girlfriend, he'd remember his place." The line went dead. Nia stared at her phone, her hands shaking. Ji-sung was already on his feet, his own phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapidly in Korean. His entire demeanor had changed. Gone was the careful businessman, replaced by someone harder, more dangerous. "We're leaving," he said, ending his call and moving to her side. "Now." "Ji-sung, what's happening?" "Someone is using you to send me a message," he said grimly, guiding her toward the exit. "And that was a mistake they're going to regret." As they left the restaurant, Nia noticed things she'd missed before. The way Ji-sung's security detail materialized from seemingly nowhere, the practiced efficiency with which they moved, the fact that their car was already waiting with the engine running. "Get in," Ji-sung instructed, his hand on the small of her back as he guided her into the back seat. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," he replied, settling beside her as the car pulled into traffic. "Nia, I need you to understand something. This threat, it's not really about you, it's about me, about my business. But that doesn't make you any less of a target." The reality of what she'd gotten herself into was finally hitting her. This wasn't just about dating someone with a dangerous job. This was about being pulled into a world where threats were real and consequences could be deadly. "Maybe I should go home," she said quietly. "Maybe this is too much." Ji-sung turned to face her fully, his expression intense. If that's what you want, I'll take you home right now. I'll make sure you're protected and I'll stay out of your life. But Nia, I need you to know, what I feel for you is real. It's not about convenience or attraction or even protection. You make me want to be better than what this world has made me. The vulnerability in his voice broke through her fear. This powerful, dangerous man was offering to walk away if that's what she needed. But he was also asking her to stay, to choose him despite the risks. I'm scared, she admitted. Good, he said softly. Fear will keep you safe, but don't let it keep you from living. As the car wound through the hills above the city, Nia realized she was at a crossroads. She could choose safety, predictability, the life she'd always known, or she could choose love, dangerous, complicated, transformative love that would change everything. Looking at Jisung's face in the dim light of the car, seeing the hope and fear warring in his expression, she realized her choice had already been made. She was all in. The safe house was a penthouse apartment in Koreatown, elegantly furnished but clearly designed for security rather than comfort. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but Nia noticed they were bulletproof. The art on the walls was beautiful, but positioned to avoid creating blind spots. Even in protection, Jisung's world was calculated and careful. How long do I have to stay here? Nia asked, setting down her overnight bag. Until we identify who made the threat and neutralize it, Jisung replied, checking his phone for what felt like the 100th time since they'd arrived. Neutralize it, she repeated. What does that mean exactly? He looked up from his phone, his expression serious. That means we find out who's responsible and make sure they understand that threatening you was a mistake they won't repeat. The clinical way he discussed violence should have terrified her, but instead, Nia found herself oddly comforted by his certainty. In Jisung's world, problems had solutions, and he had the power to implement them. Her phone rang, and they both tensed until she saw the caller ID. It's my sister, she said, answering quickly. Nia, girl, where are you? I stopped by your apartment and you're not there. I'm staying with a friend for a few days, Nia said, glancing at Jisung. A friend? What kind of friend? Is this about that guy you mentioned? The one from your disaster date? Maya, I can't really talk right now. Oh my God, you're with him, aren't you? Nia, please tell me you're being careful. You barely know this man. Jisung gestured for the phone, and after a moment's hesitation, Nia handed it over. Maya, he said, his voice taking on the same gentle tone he used with her. This is Jisung. I want you to know that your sister is safe, and she'll remain safe as long as she's with me. Nia couldn't hear her sister's response, but she could imagine Maya's surprise at having a stranger answer her phone. I understand your concern, Jisung continued. If you'd like to meet me, to see for yourself that Nia is in good hands, I can arrange that. But right now I need you to trust that I would never let anything happen to her. He handed the phone back to Nia. Nia, what the hell is going on? Maya's voice was sharp with worry. I'll explain everything later, I promise. But Maya, I'm okay. More than okay, actually. After she hung up, Jisung moved to stand beside her at the window. Your sister loves you. She's protective. We only have each other since our parents died. Then she and I have something in common, he said softly. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below. Nia found herself thinking about how much her life had changed in just a few days. A week ago, her biggest concern was whether David would call for a second date. Now she was in a safe house, protected by a man who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Jisung, she said quietly, do you ever regret the life you chose? I didn't choose it, he replied. I inherited it. My grandfather built this organization to protect Korean immigrants when the police wouldn't. My father expanded it to include other communities that needed protection. I've tried to honor their legacy while adapting to modern realities. But do you regret it? He was quiet for a long moment. I regretted the isolation, he said finally. The inability to form genuine connections with people outside this world, until I met you. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He answered in Korean, his voice sharp and authoritative. Nia couldn't understand the words, but she could read the tension in his posture, the way his free hand clenched into a fist. When he hung up, his expression was grim. They found who made the threat, he said. It's someone from my past, a rival family trying to establish territory in LA. What happens now? Now I handle it, he said simply. I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not." His response was immediate and non-negotiable. "Ji-sung, this is about me too. I have a right." "You have a right to be safe," he interrupted. "And I have a responsibility to keep you that way." They stared at each other, and Nia could see the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to protect her, but he also respected her autonomy. It was a delicate balance. "Promise me you'll be careful," she said finally. "I promise," he replied, moving closer to cup her face in his hands. "And I promise that after tonight, no one will threaten you again." He kissed her then, soft and desperate, as if he was trying to memorize the moment. When they broke apart, Nia saw something in his eyes that made her chest tighten with fear, not for herself, but for him. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Always," he promised. 3 hours later, Nia was pacing the apartment when she heard the elevator. She rushed to the door as Ji-sung entered. His suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up, a small cut on his knuckles the only sign that anything had happened. "Is it over?" she asked. "It's over," he confirmed, pulling her into his arms. "You're safe. We're safe." "What happened to—" "They won't be a problem anymore," he said firmly. "That's all you need to know." She wanted to ask more questions, but the exhaustion in his voice stopped her. Instead, she led him to the couch where he collapsed beside her and pulled her close. "Nia," he said quietly, "I need you to know that this life, my life, it will always have moments like this. Threats, dangers, situations where I have to make choices that others might not understand. If you stay with me, you're choosing all of it." She turned in his arms to face him fully. "Are you asking me to stay?" "I'm asking you to choose," Wadi said. "Choose me. Choose this life. Choose us, knowing exactly what that means." Nia thought about the woman she'd been a week ago, lonely, settling for less, afraid to demand what she deserved. Then she thought about the woman she was becoming, confident, valued, loved fiercely by a man who would move mountains to protect her. "I choose you," she said without hesitation. "I choose us." The relief in his expression was profound. "Even knowing the risks?" "Especially knowing the risks," she replied, "because you're worth it, we're worth it." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. They both tensed until she read it aloud. "Nia, this is David. I don't know what your boyfriend said to those guys, but I get the message. I won't bother you again. Sorry for being a dick." Ji-sung's mouth curved into a slight smile. "Well, that's one problem solved." "You won't cry over him again," Nia said, echoing his words from that first night. "No," Ji-sung agreed, his arms tightening around her. "You won't cry over anyone again, because you're mine now, and I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have bothered her, but instead it made her feel cherished, claimed, chosen, in a way she'd never experienced before. "And you're mine," she said boldly, surprising herself with her own possessiveness. "Completely," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "Forever." As they held each other in the quiet of the safe house, Nia realized that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the right one. She'd found love in the most unexpected place, with the most unlikely person, and she wasn't going to let fear steal it from her. She was done crying over men who didn't deserve her tears. She was done settling for less than she was worth. She was done being afraid to demand everything she wanted, and what she wanted was Han Ji-sung, dangerous world and all. Years later, Nia stood in the gallery where her children's book illustrations were being displayed, watching visitors marvel at the vibrant colors and whimsical characters she'd created. The Little Girl Who Could Talk to Colors had become a beloved series, published by one of the major houses and translated into 12 languages. "The artist is here tonight," she heard someone whisper, and she smiled, still not quite used to being recognized for her work. A warm hand settled on the small of her back, and she leaned into Ji-sung's familiar presence. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his hair now touched with silver at the temples, but his eyes held the same intensity that had captivated her that first night. "Proud of you," he murmured in her ear, his soul accent still evident after all these years in LA. "We did this together," she replied, turning to face him. It was true. His connections had opened doors, but more importantly, his unwavering belief in her talent had given her the confidence to pursue her dreams fearlessly. Their life hadn't been conventional, but it had been theirs. Built on trust, protected by love, and strengthened by the knowledge that they had chosen each other completely. She never cried over anyone again. Thank you for staying until the end. Korean Mafia Lovers has many more passionate stories waiting for you. Hit subscribe because with your help, we keep creating these incredible emotional journeys that will touch your heart.